Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Wherever you are, whatever time it is, it's obviously bedtime. I'm glad you're here. We'll be continuing the story of Frankenstein today, after a little bit of Baudelaire. Hope everyone's doing well tonight. Been a little bit down lately, and my streaming hasn't been quite as consistent as it was before. I'm sorry for that. I'm struggling with some things. I've got PTSD from some things that happened while I was in the military, while I was active duty. Some bad people did some bad things when they got me alone all by myself. And yeah. Can't recommend being all by yourself with some bad people. Things don't go well. In any case, we just had the anniversary of it, and so it's got me a little bit trapped in the past. Haunted by my demons, kind of like Frankenstein is haunted by his, I suppose, though his are physical and able to kill other people, and mine are mostly internal. On the other hand, I'm not nearly as angsty as that guy is. My God, Victor Frankenstein is as bad as a lot of teenagers I've encountered. Not something I anticipated at all. Not even a little bit. Just had to double check to make sure the mic was on. Anyway, let's see. Like I said, we'll start with some Baudelaire today. So if you've been following along, get your copy out and read along with me. We'll do meditation from the book is Flowers of Evil by Baudelaire. The section is Further Poems, and it's number 14, Meditation. Calm down, my sorrow. We must move with care. You called for evening. It descends. It's here. Hey, little dude. The town is coffined in its atmosphere, bringing relief to some, to others care. Now, while the common multitude strips bare, feels pleasure's cat o' nine tails on its back, and fights off anguish at the great bazaar. Give me your hand, my sorrow. Let's stand back. Back from these people. Look, the dead years dressed in old clothes crowd the balconies of the sky. Regret emerges smiling from the sea. The sick sun slumbers underneath an arch, and like a shroud strung out from east to west. Listen, my dearest, hear the sweet night march. And then number 15 is A Madrigal of Sorrow. What do I care though you be wise? Be sad, be beautiful, your tears, but add one more charm to your eyes. As streams to valleys where they rise, and fair every flower appears. After the storm, I love you most when joy has fled your brow downcast, when your heart is in horror lost, and over your present, like a ghost, floats the dark shadow of the past. I love you when the teardrop flows, hot as blood from your large eye, when I would hush you to repose. Your heavy pain breaks forth and grows into a loud and tortured cry. And then, voluptuous divine, delicious ritual and profound, I drink in every sob like wine, and dream that in your deep heart shine the pearls wherein your eyes were drowned. I know your heart, which overflows with outworn loves long cast aside, still like a furnace flames and glows, and you within your breast enclose a damned soul's unbending pride. But till your dreams without release reflect the leaping flames of hell, till a nightmare without cease you dream of poison to bring peace, and love cold steel and powder well, and tremble at each open door, and feel for every man distrust, and shudder at the striking hour, till then you have not felt the power of irresistible disgust. My queen, my slave, whose love is fear, when you awaken shuddering, until that awful hour be here, you cannot say at midnight drear, I am your equal, O my king. Suppose darker stuff is kind of par for the course for a book titled The Flowers of Evil. So how are you doing today, little dude? Did you have a good week in school? Things going well? Good. I'm glad to hear it. Mine has been struggle busing. She did so poorly on her last exam in geometry that the teacher refused to give her back her exam, told her to redo all of the classwork from the chapter, and then retake the test because he knew that she could do better. Of course, when I asked her what stuff was giving her trouble, she assured me, "Oh, no, I it's fine. I've got it. I know. None of it's giving me any trouble." Uh-oh. Little dude, you didn't just lie to me, did you? I get enough of that from my own kid. Well, I figured since he's here, he's not in trouble. She does get another chance if she capitalizes on it. I'm just not convinced that she will. I worry about her. But I don't know. Sometimes it seems like there's very little I can do at this point. I won't do the work for her. And it's not like I can force her. I can, take things away. I can require her to be at her desk, but unless I'm like holding her hand and writing the answers for her, I don't know. It's difficult. "30 slides in Spanish." You like Spanish, little dude? Knowing more than one language is really valuable and pretty cool. Being able to talk to different people from different places around the world. Go to places where things are different than they are where you live. Explore. I miss traveling the world. Haven't really traveled in years at this point. I'm going to in a few more years. Once the kid's out on her own, I'm going to cut loose from these ties and go travel the world again. Who knows? Maybe I'll even finally meet some people that I've only spoken to online before. Keep threatening to make people climb to the top of Mount Fuji. Meet me at dawn like I'm some mystic hermit. I think it'd be kind of cool, though. Get myself some like fancy robes and be sitting in like a meditative pose with the sun rising behind me, so it like silhouetted me over the cone of the volcano. That'd be cool, right? Or just totally dorky. I mean, either way, I'm good. So, when we left off Frankenstein, it seemed the monster had framed. No, 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 no. I said I was going to be there already. I wasn't talking about climbing together. Climb down together, sure. Excuse me. So the monster had framed Frankenstein for some crime, it seemed, and he had been called to account by the head of the village that he had arrived at after he foolishly let himself drift away on the ocean as though it was, a calm lake. I really thought Frankenstein would be smarter than that, but he's not really impressed me with some of his life choices in this book. I'm also just flabbergasted by the monster. I mean, I haven't read the book before, and so the image that I always had was a not totally intelligent creature, right? That lashed out not out of malice or intention, but out of instinct and fear, and was misunderstood because he was effectively a child. But this monster in the book, he's basically an evil mastermind. I mean, think about it. He stalked Frankenstein, and after educating himself extensively, and then stalked Frankenstein, identified his weaknesses and his family's, and killed one person and then framed another for the crime. And then he's doing it again. And has given no clue to anyone of his own existence except Frankenstein himself. I know book smarts aren't street smarts, but the monster almost seems to have both. I did not expect him to be intelligent, articulate, reasoned, malicious, very malicious. So, I kind of think they both are in a way. Oh, the monster's definitely the mastermind. Frankenstein has not shown much in the way of long-term planning, to be honest. But they're both pretty monstrous, really. Frankenstein, because he doesn't seem to want to take responsibility for his actions or his intentions, and wants to portray himself as the ultimate victim instead of taking responsibility. He did give life, but and while he does bear some responsibility, I mean, is it? Yes, it's an unconventional gifting of life, but really, parents give life to new people all the time without being revered as godlike. They literally create new life from parts of old life. So the monster in that sense is Frankenstein's child, as much or more than his creation. And certainly he was abandoned and rejected by his father, but that's hardly a new story either. It's not a fresh tale. But Frankenstein didn't come back from the dead. That's just it. He's not a recreation of somebody who already lived. He's a new being. Certainly made from the parts of other beings, but eggs and seed and whatnot are parts of other beings as well. So it's not that the monster came back from the dead. He never died. He never existed before. He's a new thing. So it's not like Dr. Frankenstein restored life to the dead or resurrected anyone. It's much closer, I think, to, creating a child. Now, an abnormally strong and intelligent child with a distinct lack of empathy and compassion, and profoundly, profoundly selfish. Absolutely. So, I don't know. There's an open question of how much responsibility Frankenstein bears for the act of the creature, since, are parents forever on the hook for the actions of their children? Certainly they have some impact on the character in the start of the child, but at some point the child has to be responsible for themselves, right? So at what point is the creature responsible for himself, rather than just blaming it on random people that he encounters and on his creator? And he keeps talking about what is owed him. The world doesn't really owe any of us anything. That's just it. If anything, we owe rather than are owed. We owe a debt just by virtue of getting to live. One that, frankly, we can never repay. But yeah, very, very childlike in that sense. Unfortunately, he has the mentality and physicality of more than an adult, and the ability to act on those selfish impulses without consequences. I'm also unsure of both the idea that Frankenstein would create a companion for him and the thought that he should destroy it to prevent the creation of a new race. Because there's nothing that actually seems to imply that, frankly, the creatures could reproduce. And as Frankenstein did note, there wasn't much predicting the mentality of the new creature that he was creating. So who knew if it would be evil or good, or even like the original creature. So anyway, things to think about. But now let's find out just how Frankenstein was framed and what's going to happen to him when he goes to this town leader. We are in, should be volume 3, chapter 4, for any of you that are following along. We closed saying that Frankenstein had to pause here because it required all his fortitude to recall the memory of the frightful events which he is about to relate in proper detail to his recollection. I was soon introduced into the presence of the magistrate, an old benevolent man with calm and mild manners. He looked upon me, however, with some degree of severity, and then, turning toward my conductors, he asked who appeared as witnesses on this occasion. About half a dozen men came forward, and one, being selected by the magistrate, he deposed that he had been out fishing the night before with his son and brother-in-law, Daniel Nugent, when about 10 o'clock they observed a strong northerly blast rising, and they accordingly put in for port. It was a very dark night. As the moon had not yet risen, they did not land at the harbor, but as they had been accustomed, at a creek about 2 miles below. He walked on first, carrying a part of the fishing tackle, and his companions followed him at some distance. As he was proceeding along the sands, He struck his foot against something and fell all his length on the ground. His companions came up to assist him, and by the light of their lantern they found that he had fallen on the body of a man who was to all appearance dead. Their first supposition was that it was the corpse of some person who had been drowned and was thrown on shore by the waves. But upon examination they found that the clothes were not wet, and even that the body was not then cold. They instantly carried it to the cottage of an old woman near the spot, and endeavored, but in vain, to restore it to life. He appeared to be a handsome young man, about 25 years of age. He had apparently been strangled, for there was no sign of any violence, except the black mark of fingers on his neck. The first part of this deposition did not in the least interest me, but when the mark of the fingers was mentioned, I remembered the murder of my brother, and felt myself extremely agitated. My limbs trembled, and a mist came over my eyes, which obliged me to lean on a chair for support. The magistrate observed me with a keen eye, and of course drew an unfavorable augury from my manner. The son confirmed his father's account, but when Daniel Nugent was called, he swore positively that, just before the fall of his companion, he saw a boat with a single man in it, at a short distance from the shore, and as far as he could judge by the light of a few stars, it was the same boat in which I had just landed. A woman deposed that she lived near the beach, and was standing at the door of her cottage, waiting for the return of the fisherman, about an hour before she heard of the discovery of the body, when she saw a boat, with only one man in it, push off from that part of the shore where the corpse was afterward found. Another woman confirmed the account of the fisherman having brought the body into her house. It was not cold. They put it into a bed and rubbed it, and Daniel went to the town for an apothecary, but life was quite gone. Several other men were examined concerning my landing, and they agreed that with the strong north wind that had arisen during the night, it was very probable that I had beaten about for many hours, and had been obliged to return nearly to the same spot from which I had departed. Besides, they observed that it appeared that I had brought the body from another place, and it was likely that as I did not appear to know the shore, I might have put into the harbor, ignorant of the distance of the town of blank from the place where I had deposited the corpse. It's literally just a blank in the book. Mr. Kerwin, on hearing this evidence, desired that I should be taken into the room where the body lay for interment, that it might be observed what effect the sight of it would produce upon me. This idea was probably suggested by the extreme agitation I had exhibited when the mode of the murder had been described. I was accordingly conducted by the magistrate and several other persons to the inn. I could not help being struck by the strange coincidences that had taken place during this eventful night, but knowing that I had been conversing with several persons in the island I had inhabited about the time that the body had been found, I was perfectly tranquil as to the consequences of the affair. I entered the room where the corpse lay, and was led up to the coffin. How can I describe my sensations on beholding it? I feel yet parched with horror, nor can I reflect on that terrible moment without shuddering in agony, that faintly reminds me of the anguish of the recognition. The trial, the presence of the magistrate and witnesses, passed like a dream from my memory, when I saw the lifeless form of Henry Clerval stretched before me. I gasped for breath, and throwing myself on the body, I exclaimed, "Have my murderous machinations deprived you also, my dearest Henry, of life? 2 I have already destroyed. Other victims await their destiny, but you, Clerval, my friend, my benefactor." The human frame could no longer support the agonizing suffering that I endured, and I was carried out of the room in strong convulsions. A fever succeeded to this. I lay for 2 months on the point of death. My ravings, as I afterwards heard, were frightful. I called myself the murderer of William, of Justine, and of Clerval. Sometimes I entreated my attendants to assist me in the destruction of the fiend by whom I was tormented, and at others I felt the fingers of the monster already grasping my neck, and screamed aloud with agony and terror. Fortunately, as I spoke my native language, Mr. Kerwin alone understood me, but my gestures and bitter cries were sufficient to affright the other witnesses. Why did I not die? More miserable than man ever was before, why did I not sink into forgetfulness and rest? Death snatches away many blooming children, the only hopes of their doting parents. How many brides and youthful lovers have been one day in the bloom of health and hope, and the next a prey for worms in the decay of the tomb? Of what materials was I made that I could thus resist so many shocks, which, like the turning of the wheel, continually renewed the torture? But I was doomed to live, and in 2 months found myself as awakening from a dream, in a prison, stretched on a wretched bed, surrounded by gaolers, turnkeys, bolts, and all the miserable apparatus of a dungeon. It was morning, I remember, when I thus awoke to understanding. I had forgotten the particulars of what had happened, and only felt as if some great misfortune had suddenly overwhelmed me. But when I looked around, and saw the barred windows and the squalidness of the room in which I was, all flashed across my memory, and I groaned bitterly. This sound disturbed an old woman who was sleeping in a chair beside me. She was a hired nurse, the wife of one of the turnkeys, and her countenance expressed all those bad qualities which often characterize that class. The lines of her face were hard and rude, like that of persons accustomed to see without sympathizing in sights of misery. Her tone expressed her entire indifference. She addressed me in English, and the voice struck me as one that I had heard during my sufferings. "Are you better now, sir?" said she. I replied in the same language, with a feeble voice. "I believe I am, but if it be all true, if indeed I did not dream, I am sorry that I am still alive to feel this misery and horror." "For that matter," replied the old woman, "if you mean about the gentleman you murdered, I believe that it were better for you if you were dead, for I fancy it will go hard with you. But you will be hung when the next sessions come on. However, that's none of my business. I am sent to nurse you and get you well. I do my duty with a safe conscience. It were well if everybody did the same." I turned with loathing from the woman who could utter so unfeeling a speech to a person just saved, on the very edge of death, but I felt languid and unable to reflect on all that had passed. The whole series of my life appeared to me as a dream. I sometimes doubted if indeed it were all true, for it never presented itself to my mind with the force of reality. As the images that floated before me became more distinct, I grew feverish. A darkness pressed around me. No one was near me who soothed me with the gentle voice of love. No dear hand supported me. The physician came and prescribed medicines, and the old woman prepared them for me. But utter carelessness was visible in the first, and the expression of brutality was strongly marked in the visage of the second. Who could be interested in the fate of a murderer but the hangman who would gain his fee? These were my first reflections, but I soon learned that Mr. Kerwin had shown me extreme kindness. He had caused the best room in the prison to be prepared for me. Wretched was indeed the best, and it was he who had provided a physician and a nurse. It is true, he seldom came to see me, for although he ardently desired to relieve the sufferings of every human creature, he did not wish to be present at the agonies and miserable ravings of a murderer. He came, therefore, sometimes to see that I was not neglected, but his visits were short and at long intervals. One day, when I was gradually recovering, I was seated in a chair, my eyes half open, and my cheeks livid like those in death. I was overcome by gloom and misery, and often reflected I had better seek death than remain miserably pent up, only to be let loose in a world replete with wretchedness. At one time I considered whether I should not declare myself guilty and suffer the penalty of the law, less innocent than poor Justine had been. Such were my thoughts when the door of my apartment was opened and Mr. Kerwin entered. His countenance expressed sympathy and compassion. He drew a chair close to mine and addressed me in French. "I fear that this place is very shocking to you. Can I do anything to make you more comfortable?" "I thank you, but all that you mention is nothing to me. On the whole earth there is no comfort which I am capable of receiving." "I know that the sympathy of a stranger can be but of little relief to one borne down as you are by so strange a misfortune. But you will, I hope, soon quit this melancholy abode, for doubtless evidence can easily be brought to free you from the criminal charge. That is my least concern. I am, by a course of strange events, become the most miserable of mortals. Persecuted and tortured as I am and have been, can death be any evil to me? Nothing indeed could be more unfortunate and agonizing than the strange chances that have lately occurred. You were thrown by some surprising accident on this shore, renowned for its hospitality, seized immediately and charged with murder. The first sight that was presented to your eyes was the body of your friend, murdered in so unaccountable a manner, and placed, as it were, by some fiend across your path. As Mr. Kerwin said this, notwithstanding the agitation I endured on this retrospect of my sufferings, I also felt considerable surprise at the knowledge he seemed to possess concerning me. I suppose some astonishment was exhibited in my countenance, for Mr. Kerwin hastened to say, "It was not until a day or two after your illness that I thought of examining your dress, that I might discover some trace by which I could send to your relations an account of your misfortune and illness. I found several letters, and among others, one which I discovered from its commencement to be from your father. I instantly wrote to Geneva. Nearly 2 months have elapsed since the departure of my letter. But you are ill. Even now you tremble. You are unfit for agitation of any kind. This suspense is 1,000 times worse than the most horrible event. Tell me what new scene of death has been acted, and whose murder I am now to lament." "Your family is perfectly well," said Mr. Kerwin, with gentleness, "and someone, a friend, is come to visit you." I know not by what chain of thought the idea presented itself, but it instantly darted into my mind that the murderer had come to mock at my misery, and taunt me with the death of Clerval, as a new incitement for me to comply with his hellish desires. I put my hand before my eyes and cried out in agony, "Oh, take him away! I cannot see him, for God's sake! Do not let him enter!" Mr. Kerwin regarded me with a troubled countenance. He could not help regarding my exclamation as a presumption of my guilt, and said in a rather severe tone, "I should have thought, young man, that the presence of your father would have been welcome, instead of inspiring such violent repugnance." "My father!" cried I, while every feature and every muscle was relaxed from anguish to pleasure. "Is my father indeed come? How kind, how very kind! But where is he? Why does he not hasten to me?" My change of manner surprised and pleased the magistrate. Perhaps he thought that my former exclamation was a momentary return of delirium, and now he instantly resumed his former benevolence. He rose and quitted the room with my nurse, and in a moment my father entered it. Nothing at this moment could have given me greater pleasure than the arrival of my father. I stretched out my hand to him and cried, "Are you then safe? And Elizabeth and Ernest?" My father calmed me with the assurances of their welfare, and endeavored, by dwelling on these subjects so interesting to my heart, to raise my desponding spirits. But he soon felt that a prison cannot be the abode of cheerfulness. "What a place is this that you inhabit, my son," said he, looking mournfully at the barred windows and wretched appearances of the room. "You travel to seek happiness, but a fatality seems to pursue you. And poor Clerval." The name of my unfortunate and murdered friend was an agitation too great to be endured in my weak state. I shed tears. "Alas, yes, my father," replied I. "Some destiny of the most horrible kind hangs over me, and I must live to fulfill it, or surely I should have died on the coffin of Henry." We were not allowed to converse for any length of time, for the precarious state of my health rendered every precaution necessary that could ensure tranquillity. Mr. Kerwin came in and insisted that my strength should not be exhausted by too much exertion. But the appearance of my father was to me like that of my good angel, and I gradually recovered my health. As my sickness quitted me, I was absorbed by a gloomy and black melancholy that nothing could dissipate. The image of Clerval was forever before me, ghastly and murdered. More than once the agitation into which these reflections threw me made my friends dread a dangerous relapse. Alas, why did they preserve so miserable and detested a life? It was surely that I might fulfill my destiny, which is now drawing to a close. Soon Oh, very soon will death extinguish these throbbings, and relieve me from the mighty weight of anguish that bears me into the dust. And in executing the award of justice, I shall also sink to rest. Then the appearance of death was distant, although the wish was ever present to my thoughts, and I often sat for hours motionless and speechless, wishing for some mighty revolution that might bury me and my destroyer in its ruins. The season of the Assizes approached. I had already been 3 months in prison, and although I was still weak and in continual danger of a relapse, I was obliged to travel nearly 100 miles to the county town where court was being held. Mr. Kerwin charged himself with every care of collecting witnesses and arranging my defense. I was spared the disgrace of appearing publicly as a criminal, as the case was not brought before the court that decides on life and death. The grand jury rejected the bill, on its being proved that I was on the Orkney Islands at the hour the body of my friend was found, and a fortnight after my removal, I was liberated from prison. My father was enraptured on finding me freed from the vexations of a criminal charge, that I was again allowed to breathe the free atmosphere, and allowed to return to my native country. I did not participate in these feelings, for to me the walls of a dungeon or a palace were alike hateful. The cup of life was poisoned forever, and although the sun shone upon me, as upon the happy and gay of heart, I saw around me nothing but a dense and frightful darkness, penetrated by no light but the glimmer of 2 eyes that glared upon me. Sometimes they were the expressive eyes of Henry, languishing in death, the dark orbs nearly covered by the lids, and the long black lashes that fringed them. Sometimes it was the watery, clouded eyes of the monster, as I first saw them in my chamber at Ingolstadt. My father tried to awaken in me the feelings of affection. He talked of Geneva, which I should soon visit, of Elizabeth and Ernest, but these words only drew deep groans from me. Sometimes, indeed, I felt a wish for happiness, and thought with melancholy delight of my beloved cousin, or longed with a devouring maladie du pas to see once more the blue lake and rapid Rhone that had been so dear to me in early childhood. But my general state of feeling was a torpor, in which a prison was as welcome a residence as the divinest scene in nature, and these fits were seldom interrupted, but by paroxysms of anguish and despair. At these moments I often endeavored to put an end to the existence I loathed, and it required unceasing attendance and vigilance to restrain me from committing some dreadful act of violence. I remember, as I quitted the prison, I heard one of the men say, "He may be innocent of the murder, but he has certainly a bad conscience." These words struck me. A bad conscience. Yes, surely I had one. William, Justine, and Clerval had died through my infernal machinations. "And whose death," cried I, "is to finish the tragedy? Ah, my father, do not remain in this wretched country. Take me where I may forget myself, my existence, and all the world." My father easily acceded to my desire, and after having taken leave of Mr. Kerwin, we hastened to Dublin. I felt as if I was relieved from a heavy weight when the packet sailed with a fair wind from Ireland, and I had quitted for ever the country which had been to me the scene of so much misery. It was midnight. My father slept in the cabin, and I lay on the deck, looking at the stars and listening to the dashing of the waves. I hailed the darkness that shut Ireland from my sight, and my pulse beat with a feverish joy when I reflected that I should soon see Geneva. The past appeared to me in the light of a frightful dream, yet the vessel in which I was, the wind that blew me from the detested shore of Ireland, and the sea which surrounded me, told me too forcibly that I was deceived by no vision, and that Clerval, my friend and dearest companion, had fallen a victim to me and the monster of my creation. I repassed in my memory my whole life, my quiet happiness while residing with my family in Geneva, the death of my mother, and my departure for Ingolstadt. I remember shuddering at the mad enthusiasm that hurried me on to the creation of my hideous enemy, and I called to mind the night during which he first lived. I was unable to pursue the train of thought. 1,000 feelings pressed upon me, and I wept bitterly. Ever since my recovery from the fever, I had been in the custom of taking every night a small quantity of laudanum, for it was by means of this drug only that I was enabled to gain the rest necessary for the preservation of life. Oppressed by the recollection of my various misfortunes, I now took a double dose, and soon slept profoundly. But sleep did not afford me respite from thoughts and misery. My dreams presented 1,000 objects that scared me. Toward morning I was possessed by a kind of nightmare. I felt the fiend's grasp in my neck, and could not free myself from it. Groans and cries rung in my ear. My father, who was watching over me, perceiving my restlessness, awoke me and pointed to the port of Holyhead, which we were now entering. So at least that time the monster failed to do the frame job. I am wondering, though, since he hadn't actually departed Orkney, and so I'm not sure if the monster was actually intentionally trying to frame him or not. I mean, certainly get vengeance upon him by destroying his friend, and certainly trying to make sure that the body was discovered. But a frame job, I'm not sure, because it's not like he could have known that Frankenstein was first going to go out on the sea, second, going to be so foolish as to get stuck out there and drift away, and third, that random chance would bring him to that nearby village. So, I don't know, maybe not an intentional frame job. Which could be why it failed. Because the first time he left evidence that directly indicted Justine of killing the kid. But this time it was all circumstantial and coincidence and Frankenstein's freak out without being able to explain that made him seem guilty. What do you guys think? Deliberate frame job or unfortunate coincidence? Now you need the tea? Oh, you heard me pouring another cup? Yep, it's time for tea, time for tea. Time for bread and jam with company. If I ever get like super successful at this, I'll totally license that for my theme song. I think it'd be a great opening for the stream. Oh, man. All right. Well, would you guys like to watch some magic for a bit? We got like a day or two left in the season. I'm at Diamond right now. Don't think I'm going to make Mythic. I got close. I got real close. I was 2 wins away from Mythic. And that is when my winning streak ended. And I got knocked all the way back down to Diamond 3. I'm not allowed to be Mythic? That's not nice, random. I think it'd be awesome to get Mythic rank. 2 months into playing Arena and I get Mythic. It'd be pretty cool. Right, let's switch things over and around. Gameplay stream. Adjust the dashboard. That's not the truth. Don't tell me that's just the truth. It's not truth. Just because you stomped me into the ground with your dino deck. Speaking of, if you want to play, you should load it up. We can totally play on stream. What should I call it? How about old school round 2? Yeah, just old school round 2. It seems a sufficiently meaningless title. Might get some interest. I suppose we better change it to mature. I mean, there's this crazy thing you could do where you like download it to your like laptop and then log in. I mean, I know that's a little weird and all, but it can definitely be done. I promise. Okay, so let's see what we can do. Oh, and if somebody can explain how this like secret layer stuff works, if it's actually Arena or if it's just like the physical cards, because some of this stuff looks really awesome. Oop. Yeah, this stuff. Let me take the hoodie off real quick. Oh. I start the stream all like cold and a little bit shivery, so I have to have the hoodie on. And then after a few cups of hot tea, suddenly it's all too warm. All right, let's just play a quick warm-up game since nobody seems to be on. Yeah. Made some adjustments to the deck. Took out the blue cards that I was using for like double turns, added a little bit of ramping, some other stuff. Trying to see if it works any better. I do seem to have a little bit of better land balance. I'm pretty consistently getting 3 lands. Why is the Twitch being a butt on your phone? Oh, I had the weirdest victory the other day. So I'm playing this guy, and it was a pretty good game. But he was able to get a big advantage over me, gained a bunch of life from those angels that give you life every time an angel or cleric enters. The 5 minutes ago I could have told you the name. Anyway, he had 2 of those, and he had gained a bunch of life. Those things right there, the righteous Valkyries. Well, I don't like that. How about you go away? And he was just beating the tar out of me. I had nothing left. He had killed my last creature. He had like 8 creatures that are all 6, like 6/6, 8/8, all that. I had 8 life left. And the only thing I could hope for was to get a board clear card on my draw. And it didn't happen. And didn't have the land. See, get too caught up in telling a story and I stopped paying attention to the game. Anyway, so when he did the turnaround, I told him it was nice play. And then when I didn't get the board clear, I told him good game because it was very clear that I was going to die the next turn. And there was just nothing I could do about it. Freaking hate mill decks. They're bullshit. They're broken. They're not fun. There's no point. Anyway, so he totally won. There was nothing I could do. Nothing at all. I guess I better get a creature out. I like the shield a lot better, but hopefully I'll draw another one. Unless it's already gone. Nope, not gone yet. And right as he hits his combat phase, he tells me, good game, and then he quits. And I get the victory. It just completely blew my mind. I was like, why? Why did you do that? Somebody asked me if it could have been like a misclick, and it's like, no, you got to come like all the way up in the corner, open it, go down to this concede button. You can't misclick concede. It just doesn't make any sense. Well, at least I can destroy that thing. See, Mildex is why I did have the like Midnight Libraries in the previous version of this deck. The lack of aggression just confuses me. Anyway, yeah, he just quit. I don't understand what happened there. Just put that down. Play that. So, why poor baby? It's not poor baby. It was just confusing. It's the weirdest victory I've had. I mean, I've seen a lot of people who give up and quit on this game, which is weird to me because I've done tons of times when I've turned the game around when I had just a couple hit points left. Even turned it around once from a -2. So if you can turn it around from that bad of a matchup or a mismatch, I don't see why anybody quits before it's over. I mean, maybe if it's like the opponent's combat turn and they get to attack and there's nothing to change it up. You suck so much, dude. So much. Alright. Well, fine. I'm doing that because there's a chance that with this card, I'll be able to cast from my graveyard. Yeah, see, I can understand that a little bit. Like if they're being really dickish. There's really nothing left you can do. All right. King Nervious Betrayal. Bleh. That's gross. I mean, that I can get. Where you have to quit because it glitched out or whatever. Sure. Totally understand that. But glitching when you've won? Or quitting when you've won? Doesn't make any sense. Okay. So I think I'll cast this one out as the shield now. Come on. And then we'll get rid of that gargoyle. There we go. So that shield will prevent these two from doing any damage to me at all. Or to Kaya. And I can block these Guild Enforcer with the Aspirant. Aspirant will come back to me. And kill the Enforcer. It should be alright. That card should not exist. That is one of the most broken cards I've seen. It's basically a force you to discard that's free and repeating. I mean, yeah, let's kill one of them. I can't cast it yet. Alright. I did find out that if one of these dies with like a bunch of ghost form counters on it, it'll bring a whole bunch of the spirits. So it's a way I can gain like a bunch of spirits. Which is pretty cool. I mean, if you think about it, all the other cards that make you discard are mostly like discard 2, and they cost at least 3 mana. So, I mean, how is it right that this Ruin Crab can keep making you discard cards for no mana expenditure at all? That's way unbalanced compared to every other color and every other card that has an effect like that. It's fucking stupid. Okay, well, let's kill one of these guys, block the other one, and Kyle will just take 1 damage. Hey, look at that. I've got a couple spirits now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Ah, I'm missing a green, that's why. No attacks. I'm telling you, it's not nice doing all the mills. Although, shouldn't this be... Yeah, it should only be doing 2 instead of 3. Maybe it's because I make the choice. Still, it should only be 2 damage. It's weird. Okay. Put that out. Put you out. No attacks. So in theory, fingers crossed, I should be able to get the emblem so I can start casting from my graveyard. Which will be huge. Yes. All right, now hopefully we can turn this around a little bit. Okay, well. I think some turnabout's fair play with the lantern. Hey, that's not nice. What happened to my protection? Oh, well. All right. Get rid of that. Oh, man. All right. Wheel. Let's do all the attacks. Guess I'll bring back Kaya. Oof. Ruh-roh. I probably should have blocked it and killed it. Oh well. Ooh. Yes, please. Get that out there. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Huh. No attacks. Oh, shoot. Just totally discarded that. All right. Yoink. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 14. So I can get 6 of these. Oh, you mean yoink? You pulled me into another channel. Okay. Well, I appreciate the warning. I appreciate the warning. Although I can't actually hear the bloops and the stuff because it's streamer mode when I'm streaming on Discord. So it mutes all the notification sounds. Fair enough. Fair enough. Hmm. Wonder how this is going to turn out. Oh, that was interesting. It didn't kill either angel. Weird. Okay, so let's put Vito in. Hopefully that's game. Yeah, can't cast the sorceries. This guy can't block. Even if these guys block, these are still going to do 4 damage each. 8 if he doesn't block. So we'll do minimum 40 damage. Man, that Kaya plus the prismatic bridge is nasty. Whew. Yes! Die, you bastard! Victory's mine! What? Why does that make me a dork? Also, that game went on forever. That was a really long game. I really thought I was going to lose that too. Like, that's what I'm talking about, where you get down really low and it looks completely against you, and you manage to turn it around. It's kind of a cool spell. I don't know. Should I play another one? Kind of seems like people are a little bored of Magic. Thought about getting Jackbox and playing it on stream. But pizza's non-malicious. Why wouldn't you grab pizza? You should definitely grab another piece of pizza. Oh, I also totally did make enchiladas last night. Yes. Nom 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 nom. I only got bit like 3 times by the hot oil. Yeah, but I mean, it was enchiladas. They were delicious. I had fun making them. You're clipping out your enchiladas what? So you have to make enchiladas with corn tortillas, and if you make corn tortillas, you have to fry them first so that they're hot and soft and hold together. Because if you try to roll them without frying them first, the texture's off and they don't hold together properly and they try to flake apart. And then if any of them break and you can't use them for the enchiladas, you cover them with butter and then salt them and roll them up and eat them, and they're delicious. Best things ever. The kid tried one and she goes, "Oh my God, this is so good." And like looked enraptured. Like she emoted more for that than when I introduced her to like really good quality truffles. like chocolate truffles. I recorded that moment. She put it in her mouth and got this stunned expression on her face and then slowly slid under the table. It was hilarious. Oh. Alright. Well, I'm losing all my viewers. And I'm still not quite up to streaming like I was. I don't think I could do a 5-hour stream. So I think I will end it here. And bid you all good night, good day, good morning, whatever it happens to be. And thank you very much for joining me. Alright. I'm going to end now. And I will catch you tomorrow for Nicholas Nickleby. I'm looking forward to talking to you guys then. All right. Farewell.